Welcome to another Epstein list. I'm Johnny Vedmore, and I'm an Epstein expert. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't only sending out a fleet of well-trained groomers to bring him fresh teenagers daily, and he wasn't only meeting with high-ranking trainees and recruits who could be installed as the next future leader of the United States. He was also a CIA interlocutor, welcoming intelligence operatives and arms dealers from all across the globe to invest in CIA-led operations. One of these CIA intelligence partners was, of course, Israel. Even though some of these Israeli agents were officially Americans, their loyalties and allegiances were always heavily weighted towards the Middle East apartheid state. This is Epstein list number 4, Epstein's high-level Israeli intelligence partners. First up, Les Wexner. One of Epstein's most significant business partners was the Ohio businessman come child swimwear and underwear pioneer, Les Wexner. Like Epstein, Les Wexner's wife Abigail was a regular political donor to the Democrat Party, while her husband donated to the Republican candidates. Wexner's influence in Ohio is almost godlike, and although Wexner had to relocate briefly in the 1980s to forge contacts within the booming New York financial scene, his businesses remained mostly based in Ohio. Wexner's mother and father had run a struggling clothes store, and after a disagreement with his father, a young Les Wexner opened a competing clothes store to his father, eventually driving his parents' business into the ground to prove a point. Wexner was extremely active among the Friends of Israel groups in America who were pushing for closer ties between the US and the Israeli state. His businesses included Limited Brand, Victoria's Secret, and 90% of Jeffrey Epstein's entire operation. Although Wexner's funding of Epstein is used as evidence of Epstein's supposed loyalty to the Mossad, in fact, the Western and Israeli intelligence infrastructure regularly worked together in ways which allowed individual components of this strategic partnership to deny responsibility for illegal and surreptitious domestic intelligence operations. By having Wexner fund Epstein through the 90s and turn of the millennium, the CIA gained plausible deniability for their domestic operations. Wexner claimed to be possessed by a demon called the Dabuk, who brought him success and made all of his decisions for him. Abigail Wexner owned Foxcoat House, where Youngman and Epstein met in secret with 2 unnamed senators during the run-up to the Iraq War. And Wexner also produced a Luntz-Wexner analysis in 2003, which mapped out the Israeli propaganda campaign to encourage the US into the Iraq War. Next up, Ahud Barak. The 10th Prime Minister of Israel was one of Epstein's very close friends and business associates. Barak, who was the IDF bigwig and tech investor, could have been involved with Epstein from the mid-80s, though this is mostly speculation. Barak didn't just fly on the Lolita Express and visit Epstein's abuse-filled mansions regularly, he was also directly invested with Nicole Youngman, Peter Thiel, and Jeffrey Epstein in the dystopian panopticon tech company Carbine 9/11. Carbine 9/11's original name was Reportee Homeland Security, and the original board of directors included Nicole Youngman, Ahud Barak, Pinchas Bukros, who was once the head of the IDF, and other Israeli intelligence agents. The company planned to take over the operation of 911 services all over America, which could give Israeli intelligence access to a massive data which could then be used to compromise American citizens. After I exposed Youngman's Carbine 9/11 links to Epstein, Thiel, and Barak in 2019, the company changed its board of directors entirely and replaced them with the likes of neocon bigwig Michael Chertoff. Chertoff was also based at the Alliance for Security and Democracy, running out of the German Marshall Fund, which was also based in Epstein's haunt of Harvard University. Barak dealt in intelligence gathering, big tech, and arms dealing, which lined up totally with Epstein's profile. In fact, Epstein was likely working as a CIA interlocutor for Barak's US-based operations to ensure cross-agency mutualism. Barak's years as a leading Israeli politician alongside his high-level military service saw him play an influential role in original ways. For instance, he was the first man to name Osama bin Laden as the perpetrator of 9/11 attacks before any investigation had taken place. He was also famous for dressing up as a woman while leading the raid on Islamic fundamentalists. He didn't wear a blue dress and red shoes like Clinton did in that Epstein picture, though. Next up, Avi Gil. Listed in Epstein's infamous Little Black Book was the former Director General of the Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Avi Gil, not to be mixed up with the IDF officer of the same name. From 2003, Avi Gil was a senior fellow at the Jewish People's Policy Institute. Previously, Gil was Prime Minister Shimon Peres's chief of staff after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. He was central to Israeli policymaking and was involved in the Oslo Accords. Again, Avi Gil was a graduate of Harvard Kennedy School, as well as gaining a master from Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Alongside Avi Gil in Epstein's Little Black Book was another former PM of Israel, Ehud Olmert. Even though his name had been publicly available in leaked versions of Epstein's Little Black Book, papers such as the Jerusalem Post didn't report on Olmert and Epstein's association until 2025, with the latter paper claiming this is the first time that Olmert has been linked to Epstein, where they should say this is the first time we've decided to report on Olmert's link to Epstein. Little is known about Ehud Olmert's association with Epstein, and he makes this list purely because of his significance as the former Israeli leader. Last up, Ari Benashi. The infamous Ari Benashi was a former employee of Israel's intelligence directorate for a decade. He was also working for Canadian intelligence and even Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe. In fact, even though I've included him within this list, Ari Benashi is a compulsive liar who has been sowing fake narratives for Western intelligence for donkey's years. Menashe claimed that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad spy and told journalist Dylan Howard that he was gathering compromising material on powerful people in order to blackmail them. This has been a prevailing narrative since the year of Epstein's death. However, if you examine Epstein's operation, the vast majority of victims were abused by Epstein himself. Epstein's operation included selecting Democratic Party leaders, acting as an interlocutor for external intelligence operatives, dealing in arms, high-end realty, arranging financing solutions for wealthy elite and intelligence operations, supplying and training the big tech bosses via Edge. Yet Ari Benashi left out all of that. Menashe was given credibility after Seymour Hersh used him as a source in Samson Option. Hersh has since seeded false narratives concerning the Nord Stream 2 bombing. Ari Benashi had been the sole source for everything which Western intelligence wishes to tie up with a bow. He also claimed that Robert Maxwell was a spy for the Mossad, and although that's probably true to some extent, the truth is that Robert Maxwell had links to French, Canadian, US, British, and Israeli intelligence. Something else Ari Benashi seems to omit from the record. And that completes Epstein's list number 4, Epstein's high-level Israeli intelligence partners. If you want answers about the Epstein case, come to NEWSPASTE.com. Find me on Substack, Patreon, YouTube, Rumble, or X just by putting in Johnny Vedmore. And of course, support this work. Like, share, and subscribe. I am heavily censored. I need your help. I've been Johnny Vedmore. Bye!